Hey, welcome back everybody. Chris Blanchard here, Job Offer Secrets. I wanted to talk today a little bit about the resume. Now, the reason I want to talk about the resume, and I'm not going to go into bullet points and how to write a good bullet point and how to use a good action verb because there's so much stuff out there on that already, and I'm going to do it in our next video. But what I really wanted to talk about today is what I call resume theory. Now, if you talk to any hiring manager, if you talk to an executive recruiter, or even your career office, they are going to pound the resume down your throat. And they're going to tell you, focus on your resume, learn your resume, memorize your resume, share it with your friends, get feedback. And they go so overkill on this step of the job process. And it kills me because I have had a resume that has got me dozens of job interviews. I'll speak with a headhunter, and the first thing they say is, Chris, send me your resume. And then we spend the next 2 weeks trying to fix my resume, and I can never understand why, because that resume is what just got me my last job and the job before that, and is what got me so many other job offers along the way. So we need to figure out at what point we stop focusing on the resume and we start focusing on something else. Now, the reason that's important, whatever you spend the most time on, whether that's practicing interview questions, learning how to answer interview questions or ask good questions in the interview, that's what you're going to get good at. So if you want to have the absolute best resume possible, better than 100% of the people out there, guess what? You're going to get job interview after job interview after job interview. But if you can't close, if you can't go into the interview and actually be charismatic and have confidence and ask good questions and answer their questions in a format that makes it easy for them to understand, you're not going to get a job. I would much rather get 2 interviews and 2 job offers than 100 interviews and 0 job offers. It takes a lot more time to interview at 100 places than it does 2. So I'm going to talk to you how you can find out when good enough is good enough. So what this reminds me of is back when I was at Penn State, and I mentioned I talked to my mentor, who was the CEO of a $2 billion company. And when I first sat down with him, I said, Matt, I am not getting jobs. Can you please look over my resume? Tell me what's wrong. Now, my career office had been pounding into my head that if you're not getting jobs, it's because you need to work on your resume. So he looked at me and he said, well, have you been getting job interviews? And at this point, I had fixed my resume to where I thought it was good, and I had started getting job interviews, but I thought there must still be something wrong with the resume because I don't have a job. And he told me, he said, if you're getting job interviews, screw the resume, right? And kind of took me back for a second, and I said, okay, well, and then that's when he went into teaching me how to ask good questions. So that's what I really want you to understand is if you're getting interviews, you can stop tweaking your resume, okay? Now, I say that with a little bit of a caveat because what I'm about to tell you next will be a little contradictory. So one thing that most people fail on is they create their resume, they spend weeks and weeks and months creating the absolute perfect resume, and then they send the same resume to McDonald's to flip burgers, nothing wrong with that, and to Procter & Gamble to be on the marketing team, and to Johnson & Johnson to be on the supply chain team. Those resumes should not be the same, right? If you're applying to be a social media marketing manager or a assistant brand manager, although they're both marketing, it should not be the same resume. Each one requires different job skills. So when I say stop tweaking your resume once you're getting interviews, what I mean by that, and what I personally do, is I build out a resume that's usually about 2 pages, okay? And the resume I send to recruiters is only 1 page, but my base resume is 2 full pages. I list out every single job experience, every single story I can think of from any classroom group work that we did. I try to look at different job skills that other companies are going to look for, and I try to create stories and resume bullet points around each of those job skills and job responsibilities that I've had, and it'll be huge. I'll talk about everything from, I've never been a babysitter, but if I was a babysitter, I'd put that experience. Because I worked in the potato fields, I put that experience. If I had a dog walking business, I put that experience, right? And I create this, what I call my base resume, because then what I do is as soon as I'm looking for a job and I look through all the different postings out there, and I read through the description, and I look at all the required skills, and it'll say something like ability to lead a team, right? So then I go through my resume and I find everything that's about leadership and I make sure that stays. And then I go and I find anything about, maybe they say ability to analyze complex data. So then I'll go through, I'll find all my bullet points, all my experience that has anything to do with data, and I'll make sure that stays in there. And what I'm doing is what I call just trimming out the fat. Get that 2-page resume down to a single page by getting rid of the stuff that isn't relevant. Then what I do is I look at those stories and I try to figure out, is there any way I can tweak them to fit the job description and use keywords that are actually in the job posting. If you've ever applied to a business where it's over 10, 20, $100 million, I can almost guarantee you that the first person who sees your resume is not a person at all. It's a robot. And they put it through some screening software, and what they're looking for is use of keywords in the resume and how it relates to the job posting. So in the job posting, if they say they want analytical leadership, they want a certain amount of work experience, right? The software is going to screen for those keywords. So when you look at the job posting, try to find the keywords that you think a software or a robot would be looking for, and use those in those resume bullet points. You might have a great story, and you talked about it, used it for financial planning. Well, if you're going through the job posting and it says financial analyst, instead of saying financial planning, change that to analyzed financials or financial analyst or analysis, right? That's going to help your resume get through that first screening process, which is so important. That gets you past 90% of the hard part when it comes to resume review process. The second thing you're going to get a lot of people trying to tell you is go out and find a unique template. Something with really bright colors and cool fonts and a really cool layout that's different from everybody else, because when you're different, then you stand out. Guys, that's crazy. When you're looking at, imagine putting yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, right? Or the executive recruiter's shoes, or the HR manager's shoes. When they're looking through resumes, yeah, they want to see things that are different, but they don't want to see someone who has a different template. They're looking for unique work experience, not a unique ability to design a template. Now, if you're going into photography, or you're being a creative designer or something like that, yeah, usually they usually even come with a portfolio, right, where you're trying to showcase your skills. So if you're going into one of those fields, absolutely make something that's really nice, that's catchy, and is going to jump out there because everybody else is doing that. But what you don't want is someone to look at it and see, holy cow, pink, and throw that out, right? So don't go for the really fancy templates, okay? The template that I've used that has secured me so many interviews is extremely simple. It starts off with education at the top. Second, it goes into my work experience. And on the left side, I have what the actual company is and my job title. On the right side, I have the city and state I was in, as well as the start and end date. That way they can see logically or chronologically my career progression, okay? So, and then after experience, I go into my skills, and then lastly, I label it activities, but this is where you can put things like hobbies and volunteer experience, right? And the whole point of that section, and I'll go more into detail on this in a later video, it's a way that you can build rapport. In fact, when I started my internship at Nestle Purina, on my resume, I had wrote professional disc golfer. One of my big hobbies is disc golf. I'm a sponsored disc golfer, and it's something I've done for several years with my brothers. But I wrote that in the bottom thinking that it was the dumbest thing ever. Nobody wants to know that I play disc golf. Well, day one on the job, my very first day, we were having a meet and greet with all of the different hiring managers and bosses of all the interns. And this one guy kept walking around to people, and he's like, are you Chris? Do you know Chris? Do you know Chris? He finally comes to me, he's like, are you Chris Blanchard? I was like, yeah, do I know you? And he's like, are you a disc golfer? Like, yeah, I am. And he's like, dude, I grew up and I lived for like 15 years right next to where the United States Championships is for disc golf. He's like, I love it there. He's like, I go play all the time. Well, guess what? That guy became a great mentor for me throughout my entire internship. Even still to this day, 3 years later, We talk every couple months because I use that little piece. It didn't quite get me the rapport with the interviewer, but someone down the road, and now I have rapport with that person, and now he's working for Pepsi down in Texas. And if I ever was in a pinch and needed a job, I know I have that connection that I could reach out to, all because I put professional disc golfer in my activities section of the resume. So anyways, I use that to emphasize a point. So what I want to make sure that you get away from this video is don't go overboard on the amount of time you spend on your resume. Everyone's going to emphasize that to you to focus on the resume, but you need to know when enough is enough. If you are getting interviews, enough is enough. Tailor that big job, trim it down, tailor it to whatever job you're applying for by adjusting some of those keywords so it matches with the job posting. If you can do that, you're going to start getting interviews. And once you are, stop tweaking the resume, at least that base resume. Every few months, every several months, once your job finally starts and you start to get some great work experience and you have a cool story, yeah, go back in, update that base resume so that you can start to add in new bullet point after bullet point after bullet point, right? But when you're in college and you're trying to get that job, you're not getting lots of new experience all the time. Just stop once you start getting interviews. I would much rather you focus on good networking than your resume. I promise that's going to do you so much more than a resume. Okay, so focus on the things that are actually going to get you the job. To be candid, it's not really the resume. Now, we're putting out a resume guide. It's going to be a free guide. It's not completely finished yet, but when the time comes, we're going to have a free resume guide for everybody because I want to make sure that people are doing the right things with the resume. I don't want people wasting their time trying to find the perfect template or the perfect font or the perfect colors, right? I want to give you something that's going to work so you can actually move on to the important things that are actually going to help you get a job. I was cruising through LinkedIn, and one of the hiring managers at the company I work at, one of his students, he used to be a college professor, and one of his students posted on LinkedIn a copy of his resume and asked, I'm asking my network, can you please go through and look at my resume and give me any pointers that you think? And this hiring manager said, forget about your resume. The resume doesn't matter. Focus on networking, build a network. That's what's going to get you jobs more than anything else. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, when you're in college trying to get your first job, networking can be tough. So you need to have a resume. It's a point of parity. It's not a point of difference. What I mean by that is everybody else has one. It's like good grammar. If someone writes, and I probably have terrible grammar today, but when someone writes a paper with good grammar, you don't notice it. But the second you start seeing misspellings, commas in the wrong places, they use a semicolon instead of a colon, it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's the same with a resume, right? You want it to be like good grammar, where when it's perfect, nobody notices, right? So that's what today's video is about. Getting your resume to a place where you're getting job interviews and then being done with it. Tomorrow we're going to go over some other cool stuff where I'm actually going to walk through how to do a good bullet point using a format that I actually created myself when I was teaching 150 students how to get jobs. The professor came back to me and told me he couldn't believe the amount of stuff that his kids were learning in this portion of the class, and they were getting job offers like never before. And a big part of it is this framework that I created. So I'm going to go through that tomorrow, and look forward to seeing you guys all. Seeing you all then. See you later.